3 weeks ago, I handed my husband everything. The house. The cars. His real estate company. Every single asset we owned. My lawyer begged me to stop. My mother-in-law watched with a satisfied smirk. And Benjamin's 27-year-old mistress? She took a selfie in the courtroom. Benjamin smiled like he'd won the lottery. That smile lasted exactly 47 seconds. I'm Tessa. I'm 34. And this is how I spent 3 years planning the quietest move you've ever heard of. Not revenge. Freedom. It started the night I opened the wrong drawer in my husband's office. Benjamin Holloway and I had what everyone called the perfect life. Big house in the Houston suburbs. His Porsche in the garage. My 12-year-old Honda on the street. Benjamin controlled everything about our money. I'll handle the finances, you handle the house, he told me on our honeymoon. I was young, in love, desperate to avoid the fights that destroyed my parents' marriage. So I agreed. Before our son Oliver was born, I was a senior accountant. I was good at it. But when I got pregnant, Benjamin sat me down with that calm tone he used when he'd already made his decision. The baby needs his mother at home. I make enough for both of us. So I quit. When Oliver started kindergarten and I picked up part-time remote work, Benjamin barely noticed. To him, I was furniture. Useful, present, unremarkable. His office stayed locked. Credit card statements went to his email. Everything was his domain. And his empire? Built on sand. Oliver changed everything for me. My son came into this world 6 years ago with his father's dark hair and my stubborn chin. From the moment they placed him in my arms, I understood a love I'd never known. Benjamin saw Oliver as a legacy item. Something to mention at business dinners. He missed Oliver's first steps because of a conference call. Missed his first word because he was traveling. Missed every school play, every parent-teacher conference, every bedtime story. I remember one evening about a year ago. Oliver waited by the window for 2 hours, his favorite picture book pressed against his chest. "Mommy, when is Daddy coming home?" He said he'd read to me tonight. I texted Benjamin. No response. Called. Voicemail. Oliver fell asleep on the couch still holding that book. When Benjamin finally walked in at 11 p.m., smelling of cologne that wasn't his usual brand, I asked if he'd forgotten his promise. He barely looked up from his phone. "I'm building a future for this family, Tessa. Oliver will understand when he's older." But I saw my son's face the next morning when he realized Daddy had come and gone without saying goodnight. Benjamin hadn't hugged Oliver in 3 months. Our son wasn't a priority. He was an afterthought. 3 years ago, Oliver had a school field trip coming up. I needed his passport. Benjamin usually kept our documents in his office, but that night he'd forgotten to lock the door. I found the passport in the top drawer, right where he said. But my hand brushed against a folder I'd never seen before. First National Bank. Final notice stamped in red. My accountant brain kicked in before my wife's heart could stop me. 90 days past due. $340,000 outstanding on a commercial property loan. I opened another envelope. Wells Fargo. Delinquent account. Then Chase. Then a collection agency I'd never heard of. By the time I finished, my hands were shaking. Not from fear. From the sheer impossibility of what I was seeing. Benjamin's empire was hemorrhaging money. The properties he bragged about were underwater. The company that was supposed to be our retirement was drowning in over $2 million of debt. And he'd never said a word. I pulled out my phone and photographed every single document. Time-stamped. Dated. Crystal clear. Put everything back exactly as I found it. Turned off the light. Walked out. I didn't sleep that night. But I wasn't scared anymore. I was calculating. The next morning, I called my college roommate Jennifer. She worked at a regional bank. She was also the only person who'd ever looked at Benjamin and said, "I don't know, Tess. Something about him feels off." I should have listened then. I was listening now. I need to run a credit check on myself. Jennifer didn't ask why. Come to my office tomorrow. What I learned confirmed my worst fears. Most of the debt was in Benjamin's name alone. But he'd taken out 2 loans using both our names, forged my signature, or used an electronic version I'd never authorized. This is fraud, Jennifer said quietly. You could report him. Not yet. I need the full picture first. And so began my 3-year education in survival. I opened a savings account at a different bank. Every month, I funneled what I could from my part-time work. 200 here, 300 there. I documented everything. Saved every email, every statement, every scrap of evidence. Jennifer checked in periodically. The debt's growing, not shrinking. I wasn't surprised. But I was ready. Benjamin had no idea his wife was watching. A year ago, Benjamin started coming home smelling like someone else. Perfume that wasn't mine. Text notifications he'd silenced too quickly. Business trips that multiplied overnight. He upgraded his wardrobe, $3,000 suits charged to maxed out credit cards, while I wore dresses from 5 years ago. You should put more effort into your appearance, he told me one evening. Madison, she's a new business associate. She always looks put together. Madison. He said her name too casually. Too often. I didn't confront him. I already knew our marriage was over. I just needed to know how long I had. One night, Benjamin left his phone on the counter while he showered. The screen lit up. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Wear the blue tie. XO. I didn't touch it. The preview told me everything. But Benjamin never understood this about me. I wasn't plotting revenge. I wasn't consumed by jealousy. I was building my case, waiting for him to show his hand. The first time I met Madison Clark, she was wearing a knockoff Birkin and Benjamin's arm around her waist. His mother's birthday dinner. Benjamin walked in with Madison like she belonged there. Everyone, this is Madison. She's consulting on new investment opportunities. She was 27. Blonde highlights and practiced smiles. Her dress was designer, or designed to look it. Benjamin finally found someone with ambition, Helena announced, squeezing Madison's hands. Then she glanced at me. Tessa, be a dear and help Kate with the appetizers. I spent that dinner watching my husband parade his mistress while his family pretended not to see what was obvious. Oliver sat beside me, confused. Mommy, who is that lady? Why is she sitting in your chair? She's nobody important, sweetheart. Madison wasn't my enemy. She was a symptom. 6 months before the final hearing, Benjamin sat me down at our dining table. I want a divorce. No preamble. No apology. Just 5 words. I'd known this was coming, but hearing it still felt like a door slamming shut. I see. What are you proposing? Benjamin leaned back with that expression he used for people he considered beneath him. I want the house, the cars, the company. Everything we built. And what about me? He shrugged. You can keep Oliver. I'm not interested in custody battles. The kid would slow me down. The kid. Our son. 6 years old. And his father couldn't even use his name. You're sure? You want everything? Every property, every account, every share. Benjamin smiled. I'm being reasonable. Most men would fight for the child too. I'm letting you walk away with something. Something. My son. Like Oliver was a consolation prize. All right, I said quietly. I'll need time to review everything. Benjamin's eyebrows rose. He'd expected tears. Not compliance. What he didn't know was that I'd been waiting for this moment for 3 years. Jennifer found Rebecca Stone for me. She's handled some of the ugliest divorces in Houston. And she wins. Not because she's ruthless. Because she's thorough. Rebecca's office was all wormwood and framed credentials. Silver-streaked hair and assessing eyes. Sit down, Mrs. Holloway. Tell me everything. So I did. 3 years of documentation. The debt. The forged signatures. The affair. Benjamin's demands. all of it in organized folders. Rebecca reviewed each piece methodically. When she finished, she looked up with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Respect. Most clients come to me in crisis. You've come prepared. I'm not interested in war. I'm interested in freedom. Then let me tell you your options. She set down her pen. You could fight for half of everything. Texas is a community property state. Half of $4.7 million in debt. Rebecca smiled. You understand the situation better than your husband does. I've had 3 years to understand it. He still thinks he's a millionaire. What do you actually want out of this divorce? I thought about Oliver. About my savings account. About starting over with nothing but my son and my dignity. I want him to get exactly what he's asking for. Rebecca studied me. Then she pulled a thick legal textbook from her shelf. Under Texas law, when marital assets are divided, the debts attached to those assets can be assigned as well. It's called a liability assumption clause. So if Benjamin wants everything, then Benjamin gets everything, including the $4.7 million in liabilities. I felt something settle in my chest. He won't read it carefully. He never does. That's his choice. But we need to protect you legally. There's a waiver of independent review. He'll acknowledge he had the opportunity to have everything examined and chose not to. His lawyer will tell him to get an audit. Almost certainly. But will Benjamin listen? I thought about my husband. His ego. His absolute conviction that he was the smartest person in any room. No, he won't. Then here's what we do. We draft an agreement that gives him exactly what he's demanded. We include the liability assumption clause on page 47 of a 52-page document. And we wait. The pressure came from everywhere. Madison called me. Tessa, hi. I know this is awkward, but Benjamin and I are looking at properties together, and the financing is getting complicated. If you could just speed things along, it would make everything easier. Then Benjamin via email. Tessa, my patience is running thin. If you don't sign within 2 weeks, I'll file a motion claiming deliberate delay. Don't make this ugly. His lawyer sent formal letters. His mother left voicemails. But buried in Madison's call was something revealing. The financing is getting complicated, which meant Benjamin needed assets on paper to secure new loans. He was planning to leverage properties already drowning in debt. He wasn't just greedy. He was desperate. I showed the email to Rebecca. He's signing a waiver with this kind of documented pressure? She almost laughed. Tessa, your husband is building our case for us. Every threat was another nail in his own coffin. Helena summoned us to her River Oaks dining room. We should settle this like civilized people. Benjamin sat at the head of the table, Helena to his right. I was placed at the far end. Tessa has agreed to accept Benjamin's terms, Helena began. She'll sign this week. Benjamin smiled. I always knew she'd come around. Tessa understands she wasn't equipped for this kind of negotiation. We should acknowledge that Benjamin is being extremely generous, Helena continued. He's letting Tessa keep Oliver, even though a boy needs his father. Oliver is my priority, I said quietly. I just want what's best for him. Then sign the papers, Benjamin said. I looked down at my hands, performing the defeated wife they expected. You're right. I'll sign. I only wanted to make sure I understood everything. Helena beamed. Finally, some sense. What nobody understood was that I hadn't surrendered. I just made them think I had. The night before the final hearing, I sat alone in my tiny apartment. 2 bedrooms. 1 bathroom. Clean, safe, and ours. Oliver had fallen asleep, his stuffed elephant tucked under his arm. I watched him breathe, then walked to where my documents were spread out. 3 years of preparation. All leading to tomorrow. I reviewed the agreement one more time. 52 pages. The liability clause on page 47. The waiver on page 49. Everything legal. Everything transparent. For anyone who bothered to look. Benjamin wouldn't look. Oliver stirred, mumbling about pancakes. I sat on the edge of his bed, brushing hair from his forehead. Whatever happens tomorrow, we're going to be okay. January 3rd was unseasonably warm. 68 degrees. Bright sun. I stood outside the family courthouse feeling strangely calm. My phone buzzed. Rebecca, in the building. Room 4B. Ready when you are. Coming. Through the window of room 4B, I could see Benjamin already seated, Stephen Garrett beside him. Both reviewing papers with the relaxed posture of people who believed they'd already won. Rebecca was waiting outside. How are you feeling? Ready. Every document filed. Every clause triple-checked. She touched my arm briefly. Whatever happens, you've already proven you're not who they think you are. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm just trying to be free. She nodded, then opened the door. Benjamin looked up as I entered. That confident, condescending smile. Tessa. Glad you could make it. I took my seat beside Rebecca without responding. Let him smile. It wouldn't last. Madison sat in the front row in a red dress, texting. She looked up long enough to give me a pitying smile. Beside her sat Helena, immaculate in Chanel. They'd come to witness Benjamin's triumph. Judge Meredith Hughes entered, gray hair pinned back, reading glasses perched on her nose. We're here for Holloway versus Holloway. Final dissolution hearing. Counselors, are both parties prepared? We are, Your Honor, Stephen said. We are, Rebecca confirmed. Then let's begin. The agreement was read with clinical detachment. Mrs. Holloway agrees to relinquish all claims to the marital residence at 4521 Willow Creek Drive, as well as all motor vehicles. The list went on. Properties. Investment accounts. Holloway Properties LLC. Every asset Benjamin had demanded. Madison squeezed Helena's arm, beaming. Judge Hughes looked over her glasses at me. Mrs. Holloway, you understand you're relinquishing your community property rights? I understand, Your Honor. You've had adequate time to review with counsel? I have. Any questions? No, Your Honor. Stephen cleared his throat. Your Honor, I'd like it noted that my client was advised to obtain independent financial review but has elected to waive that review. Judge Hughes turned to Benjamin. Is that accurate? You're waiving your right to have the financials independently verified? Benjamin didn't hesitate. I built this company, Your Honor. I know exactly what it's worth. I don't need some accountant telling me what I already know. Then please sign the waiver on page 49. Benjamin took Stephen's Mont Blanc pen and signed with a flourish. I watched Stephen's face. The attorney was flipping through pages rapidly. His eyes stopped on page 47. The color drained. Benjamin, he whispered urgently. Wait. But Benjamin was already on page 52, signing his name. Done. The moment Benjamin's pen lifted, Stephen's face went white. Benjamin? His voice barely a whisper. We need to stop. What? Benjamin laughed, sliding the document toward the clerk. It's done. Let's wrap this up. You don't understand. Page 47. The liability assumption clause. The what? Judge Hughes held up her hand. Mr. Garrett, is there an issue? Stephen looked from Benjamin to the judge to me. I could see the moment he understood he couldn't undo what had just happened. Your Honor, my client may not have fully understood. Your client, Rebecca interrupted smoothly, was asked directly if he wanted independent review. He declined. He signed the waiver voluntarily. The agreement is executed. What is everyone talking about? Benjamin's voice lost its confidence. What's on page 47? Stephen handed him the document. I watched Benjamin's eyes move across the text. The party receiving marital assets hereby assumes full personal liability for all debts, liens, mortgages, and financial encumbrances. Benjamin's face went gray. This says I'm responsible for the debts. All $4.7 million, Rebecca confirmed. As of your signature 30 seconds ago. Madison's voice cut through. 4 million? What? Benjamin shot to his feet. His chair screeched. This is fraud. She tricked me. She can't do this. Mr. Holloway, sit down. Judge Hughes's tone left no room for argument. I'm not sitting down until someone explains how this is legal. Stephen, do something. Stephen stood frozen. You signed the waiver, Benjamin. You specifically stated you knew what the assets were worth. You refused review. Because I thought, Benjamin spun toward me. You knew. You knew the whole time. You planned this. I didn't plan anything. My voice came out steady. I just gave you exactly what you asked for. Your Honor. Benjamin slammed his palm on the table. I demand this be voided. I was deceived. You were not deceived, Mr. Holloway. Judge Hughes removed her glasses. The financial records of your company are public. The debts attached to your properties are matters of record. Your wife's attorney included full disclosure documentation. You chose not to read it. I didn't know. You signed a waiver stating you didn't need to know. The judge's voice hardened. This court cannot protect parties from their own arrogance. From the gallery, Madison's voice, high and panicked. Benjamin, what does this mean? You said you were a millionaire. Helena was already standing, gathering her purse. Her face rigid with fury. Mom, Benjamin reached toward her. Don't. She walked out without looking back. Benjamin stood in the wreckage of his victory, finally understanding he hadn't won anything. He just inherited his own destruction. In the silence, I stood. Benjamin turned to me, his face contorted with rage and desperation. You destroyed me. You destroyed everything. I walked to the center of the courtroom. No, Benjamin. You destroyed yourself. I just stopped cleaning up after you. Tessa, for 8 years, you told me I had no value, that I didn't understand business or money. You said I was just a part-time bookkeeper. You said Oliver was a burden. You said I should be grateful. His mouth opened. No words came. I'm not grateful. I'm free. And for the first time in 8 years, I can finally breathe. I turned to Rebecca, who was already packing her briefcase. Then I looked back at Benjamin one final time. I don't hate you. I'm not even angry. I just refuse to let you define who I am for one more second. Tessa, wait. We can fix this. No, there's nothing left to fix. I walked out, my footsteps steady. Behind me, Benjamin calling my name. Stephen trying to calm him down. Madison demanding explanations. But I didn't look back. I was already gone. 3 months later, Benjamin's empire finished crumbling. Jennifer told me over coffee. The house sold for $580,000. Not enough to cover the mortgages. Benjamin still owed $320,000. The Porsche was repossessed at 3 a.m. A neighbor witnessed Benjamin in his bathrobe, screaming about lawsuits. Holloway Properties filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in March. The remaining debt, nearly $3 million, stayed with him. He moved into a studio apartment. No doorman. No pool. Nothing. And his job? I asked. Some small brokerage hired him. Commission only. Jennifer shook her head. From CEO to entry level in 90 days. He did this to himself, I said. I just stopped protecting him from the consequences. Jennifer squeezed my hand. That's the best kind of revenge. The kind you don't even have to take. Summer arrived with fresh starts. Our apartment had transformed into home. Oliver's drawings on the refrigerator. Plants on the windowsill. Herbs I'd started growing to save money and kept because they made me happy. I returned to accounting full-time in April. By June, I'd been promoted to senior accountant. Oliver was thriving. New friends. Soccer team. Chapter books before bed. He rarely asked about his father anymore. "Mom, watch me," he shouted from across the park, attempting a cartwheel that ended in giggles. I applauded, feeling something I hadn't experienced in years. Uncomplicated happiness. My phone buzzed. Community college. I'd been accepted into their evening CPA program. Classes started in September. "What are you smiling about?" Oliver asked, running over. "Good news, buddy. Mom's going back to school." "Like me?" "Exactly like you. Can we celebrate with ice cream?" "Absolutely." We walked to the shop on the corner, hand in hand. This small life, this modest apartment, this ordinary job, this simple joy, was everything I'd never known I wanted. And it was entirely my own. The text came on a Tuesday evening, almost exactly 1 year after the hearing. "I need to talk to you. It's about Oliver." I stared at my phone, thumb hovering over delete. Then curiosity, or maybe something softer, made me type back. "Public place. Tomorrow, noon. The cafe on Westheimer." I almost didn't recognize Benjamin when he walked in. The tailored suits were gone. Khakis and a polo shirt that hung loose. He'd lost weight. His face looked tired. He sat down without ordering anything. "You look good," he said. "You look happy." "I am." Silence stretched. "I'm not here to apologize," he finally said. "I know you wouldn't believe me. I'm here because I've been in therapy for 6 months. My therapist says I need to take accountability for what I did. To you. To Oliver. I waited. I was a terrible husband and a worse father. I treated you like you didn't matter. I treated our son like an afterthought. I was so obsessed with my own image that I couldn't see what I was destroying. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to see Oliver. Not to get back at you. I just want to try to be his father. A real father. If you'll let me." I studied him, searching for the arrogance I'd learned to navigate. "I didn't find it." "I'll consider it," I said. "On conditions." That night, after Oliver was asleep, I sat on my balcony with tea and watched the city lights. I thought about the woman I'd been 3 years ago. Scared. Uncertain. Convinced silence was her only option. I thought about the woman I was now. Still quiet, but no longer afraid. Benjamin wanted back into Oliver's life. 6 months ago, I would have said no. But something in his eyes had been different. Something broke in trying to rebuild. I couldn't heal him. That wasn't my job. But Oliver deserved to know his father. Or at least the father Benjamin was trying to become. So I set conditions. Monthly therapy sessions verified by his counselor. Steady employment for 6 months minimum. Supervised visits first, progressing only if Oliver felt comfortable. And one absolute rule, he would never speak about me negatively in front of our son. Benjamin agreed to everything. I didn't know if he'd follow through. People promise change all the time. But I'd learned something important. Boundaries aren't about controlling other people. They're about protecting your own peace. I pulled out my journal and wrote, "Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors. You choose who walks through them." I chose to give Benjamin a door. Whether he walks through it as a better man is up to him. Either way, Oliver and I will be okay. The tea had gone cold, but I didn't mind. I sat there watching stars emerge through Houston's light pollution and let myself feel something I'd almost forgotten. Hope. September arrived with fresh notebooks and new beginnings. Oliver started first grade the same week I started CPA classes. We developed a routine, homework together at the kitchen table, him practicing letters while I studied tax law. "What's 4 plus 6? I'd ask. 10. "What's the difference between assets and liabilities?" I'd laugh. "Where did you learn that word?" "From you. You say it in your sleep sometimes." Work was going well. My boss mentioned partnership track if I finished my certification. For the first time in my adult life, I was building something that belonged entirely to me. Jennifer came by one evening with wine. "Your ex-husband paid off one of his smaller debts last month. First voluntary payment since the bankruptcy. I took a sip. That's good for him. Aren't you curious about the details? Not particularly. Jennifer studied me, then smiled. You really are over it, aren't you? I was over it the day I walked out of that courtroom. I just didn't know what came next. Now I do. The next morning, Oliver and I walked to school together, his hand warm in mine. Mom, he asked as we reached the gates. Are you happy? I knelt to his level, adjusting his backpack. Yes, baby. I really am. He smiled and ran toward his classroom. I stood watching until he disappeared inside. Then I walked toward my future. Before I end this, I want to share something my therapist helped me understand. Benjamin wasn't born cruel. He was raised to believe being a man meant controlling everything. When his business started failing, he couldn't admit it. Not to me, not to his family, not to himself. Because in his mind, admitting failure meant he wasn't a real man. So he doubled down. Took on more debt. Projected more confidence. And when the pressure became unbearable, he found someone new who didn't know the truth. Understanding this doesn't excuse what he did. It just explains it. And honestly, it helped me stop taking it personally. His cruelty was never about me. It was about his own fear of being seen as weak. As for me, I had my own patterns to confront. I avoided conflict because I watched my parents' marriage implode. I thought silence meant peace. I didn't realize I was confusing peace with paralysis. What I learned is that silence can be powerful, but only when it's a choice, not a cage. If there's a lesson here, it's this. The people who underestimate you are building their own traps. You don't have to do anything but stay ready. So that's my story. A woman who was told she didn't matter. Who spent 3 years proving, not to anyone else, but to herself, that she did. Thanks for listening, and if you liked this story, share it with others, and don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about people who were counted out and ended up on top. Sometimes the quietest move is the most powerful one.